Let's
It's
see.
real.
Can you hear me?
Man, everything's good, man.
Cool, cool, cool.
This is nice.
Is
This
it
is nice.
nice?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no ghetto scene, is it?
No, bro. It's real. It's real.
It's real. So how
Yeah.
you been doing?
Man, I've been in the zone, bro.
Have you really?
Yeah, man. When I get into the writing zone, bro, I'm just zoned.
So you just go into, hey man, I was looking at some of your material. It is really, really academic, should I say?
Well, well,
Scholarly.
yeah. And I think what happens is so when I started writing, I was going to eventually go into the transatlantic slave trade and
Hmm.
then end up on where we are now and what we're dealing with, in America as black folks. I was initially going to do that. But
Right,
the
right.
more I looked at it, I'm like, man, if people don't understand European history, right? If people don't understand civilizations, the different civilizations that were in play before what we now call Western civilization, and if you don't understand Europe, if you don't understand the concepts of Christianity and white supremacy, nothing else is going to make sense to you. So you at least need a foundation to understand Europe. And I tried to do it, as kind of as it came to my mind. Because what I found out was when I started going into the start of the transatlantic slave trade, man, I had wrote everything on Spain, on Portugal, the beginnings in Portugal, how Spain kicked in and kind of kicked Portugal out, then how the Dutch came in and just started running everything, and then how the British came in and made it a business, right?
Wow,
Then
man.
all the different areas that was touched and all the different, from South America, from Brazil to the northern coast of the Caribbean and South America. Then of course on into the Caribbean area,
Mhm.
how it made it to America. But not only that, the people that were involved in it, the banks and a lot of people don't like talking about it and the part that the Jews played.
Big
Because what
part.
what what people don't understand is that whenever you talk about trade in the ancient times or in time past, that was the Jews' joint. They were involved in all trade. And not only that, my brother, what a lot of people don't realize is that there was a white slave trade going on in Europe. And if you ever wondered how these guys got rich, like Julius Caesar, man, Julius Caesar was loaded because all those lands he conquered and those roads that they say the Romans built, they weren't just a spider web of connections uh, for the Roman legions to make it to where they wanted to make it to,
Hmm.
but it was also a way to bring trade back. And that trade was in slaves, my brother, to
Wow.
the slave markets, white
Looks
folks.
like it looks like that's where we're back at right now.
Bro, it's never left.
No, it hasn't.
It's never left.
You heard of the movie Tom's Cabin, right? On YouTube, you're talking about the Dutch enslavement of Africans. On YouTube, if you go pull up this Goodbye Uncle Tom,
That's wrong.
that was
That was
that was
wrong.
awful.
That was wrong.
Even today, I notice that when I'm talking to people referring to the motherland, people still uses the colonizer's name, Africa. And the original name is Akibalon.
Akabulan, yeah.
Yeah. And I think they're very heavily into their ancestry with a lot of Christian influence.
Yeah.
I believe that if they can start using their real original name, that will help them to set themselves spiritually free. I personally believe that we need to figure out a way to cleanse ourselves from this colonization. I always challenge myself to, when I was on this quest for knowledge, I have to deconstruct everything
Come on now.
and to
Come
deconstruct
on.
everything I thought I knew,
Yep.
threw it all out and challenge it.
Yep.
And then when I did that, I made a lot of enemies, but I didn't care. This
How,
was all about me.
how do you like this? How do you like this? African consciousness may be defined as a Black person's state of mind when he or she maintains intellectual vigilance as the proper posture towards all scholarship, which ignores the truth about African origins of spirituality. I mean, that's like right now, right before you came, right? So I finished the section that I sent you. I had Africa, Greece, and Rome. But one thing I didn't put in was the Islamic civilization, right? And I just ran across a something from an old Columbian dictionary describing the word Arab. And just like the Europeans have taken everything, right, that was
Hmm.
African, right? They've taken everything that's African. I'm sitting here reading something where now, in this definition of Arab, they're saying that Islam gave us everything. When actually, what Islam did, to their credit, when Islam went into these Christian countries, Islam had respect for the wisdom and for the knowledge. Because, come on, man, we know where Arabs came from. They came from the desert, they were wild desert people. Don't get me wrong, they had more civilization than what the Europeans had,
Hmm.
right? But they were wild desert nomads, right? You know, they had their own type of spirituality, which we learn a little bit, about the Bible and their systems of belief, whatever. But, of course, when Christians look at them, they call them pagans. But when they did start their movements, right, their religious movements to conquer people, um, they did have respect for learning, just like the Persians. They
Hmm.
all had respect for learnings. And then, of course, when the Greeks came, Europeans were like, damn, wow. Then, of course, the Greeks saw all that, and the Greeks wanted to put forth their stamp on everything, on civilization, called Hellenism,
Hmm.
right? And by the time they defeated the Persians, which of course they got information from the Persians, who also held on, had a respect for learning and information. They go into all these empires and go, damn, these people are made, they're literate. They're smart. They had respect for that, for what the Persians had did. And of course, the Persians had gone down into Egypt when the Greeks came and conquered them, right? And then
Right.
of course, when the Romans came along, the Romans didn't give a shit about none of that. The Romans were just about power. So what I'm saying is that yes, the Islamics did come and they had respect for the libraries. They took all that ancient knowledge, right? That the Greeks had, of course, that the Greeks got from Africa, right? So they took that knowledge from the Greeks also, and they incorporated all that, even though it was in the midst of the Roman Empire. They already had the books, they already had the libraries, they were already doing the learning. Because one of the things that was very interesting, I think it's Williams writes about it, or G.M. James writes about it in Stolen Legacy about philosophy. He goes, man, philosophy can't grow in an area where there's chaos. Man, there's got to be
No, it
peace.
can't.
So there was, and of course I studied this. I looked this up. He said, there was no peace in Greece during that time, man. During the early time of Alexander, from 600 BC and everything else, when they were busy fighting the Persians, the people didn't have any peace. They were, they were the ones who killed philosophers. So it wasn't until Greece was able to get into Egypt after Alexander. That's when they started sending all of their learned people there and bringing all that knowledge, Greek philosophy, and all that stuff. And the rest of those guys, man, know thyself and all that.
Well, and
I don't mean to be running.
excuse me.
I'm running,
Excuse me.
man.
Oh
We
no,
just,
that's cool. I know. Hey man,
and
I'm
this
loving
is,
it.
hey, this is kind of what I was saying, man. That when we get to talking, we're just going to get to talking how we just normally talk. There you go. You're no volume. Can't hear you.
There
Go
it is.
ahead.
It came back. Hey, that's just the way we roll, man. Like, soon as we came in, we went right into it.
Yeah. And like I say, big dog, I'm not even, I'm, just like you're saying, my calling, right? we all have a journey. We've all, and I made it to God has granted me the universe to be 60 something years old, and in that time there's been an accumulation of knowledge and experience, and thinking and figure it out and learning, and my goal, bruh, my goal is to free my people from everything Europe. And man, y'all need to return to the basics of what your spirituality is. And again, this is part of what deconstruction
Hmm.
what deconstruction is. So now that you deconstruct, you go like, well, okay, what was that? Well, guess what? You sat here and you've looked at this Bible. You've dealt with faith. You've dealt with belief. All of that is part of the Piscean age, right? Faith and belief, right? And
Right.
you've taken this book that is truth, mystery, allegory, metaphor, and motif. You've taken this book and you've taken what everybody has said to you, and you've formed a construct about your religion. So when something comes along and breaks all of that up, you say, well, okay, what is this that I've believed in? Where am I at now? Now, if you, the reason why people need faith and people need belief is because they don't have fact.
That makes sense. Makes a
Fact,
lot of sense.
belief. You can believe that the moon is made of green cheese, but they've landed on it and proved that the moon is not made of green cheese, right?
Right.
So I don't need faith if I have facts. And part of that is, you got to know yourself. You got to know thyself. And that's why I say I love that song by Rance Allen. It goes, I just found me. Because, man, if you don't know yourself, how can you know God? If you don't know yourself, if you can't step on the outside and look at yourself and evaluate your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your motives, the thoughts and intents of your heart, your strength, your failures, your tendencies, right? Hear me out. And all of that, my brother, is part of your construct, right?
Right.
So you have to look at how you've constructed things, you know? So, yeah, you have to look at all of that. And if you're dealing from true spirituality, is based on truth, right?
That's right.
You have to be a truth seeker, which means, you got to be true. I'm true to me. It's funny, you had a question in there, and it had to do with self concept. How does that have to deal with your construct? And I was like, hey, man, let me tell you something. My self talk to me is top line, bruh. I believe that I am that shit. I believe that God has specially called me. I don't have a, what do you call it, a bad self concept about myself, but I do that in truth.
Right.
Knowing and being honest with my fears, my insecurities, my weaknesses, right? Areas, my blind spots, things that I might not see, right? I understand how sometimes you can be almost overconfident because you've seen yourself successful in just about everything that you've done. But even that, you have to look at it honestly. You know what I'm saying? When you're dealing,
Right.
and be truthful with yourself.
I think that every conscious person or spiritual person has to take that journey within and
Yeah,
have to challenge themselves with
yeah,
truth. When I started my journey, I started off in the church and they gave me a foundation, of the 10 commandments and things like that. But the 10 commandments just seemed to me that it didn't cover the full spectrum of God or life. And I couldn't put every experience that I was going through into that 10 commandments. So I started my journey looking for answers. And then I finally got some answers. And then as I done more research into that journey, come to find out the 10 commandments was the commandments that God gave Israel on how to behave out of heathenism. That was, I will not do this to my brother. I should not do this. I will do this. I will do that. That was all tribal. That was all commandments that God gave them as tribal people to know, to learn how to behave amongst it. each tribe. Because
It's a
remember,
thought,
when they came out of Goshen, they were heathens.
bro. I want you to go, but let me add on to that. Let me
Add
add
on.
on to that. Like I said earlier, those people out there, they were desert people with some types of concepts of God. And look where they were coming out of. They were coming out of a place where people also had concepts, deeper concepts of God based on based on science, based on astronomy.
Yep.
They had a concept of God that they put on the wall.
Yeah,
These
they wrote
are
it.
but what it was never a God on the outside,
Mm-mm.
right? Looking down. Like you didn't have to go find God. The God was already in
In
you
you. That's right.
first.
So,
Okay.
and so once I realized that, I was like, okay. And it wasn't until I moved and started studying the Afrocentric movement, doing the study in the Afrocentric time, that started talking about Egypt and all this stuff, right? And then come to find out, I ran across a manuscript called the 42 Confessions of Mayat.
So Maya.
So it came to find out that Mayat was the confessions to clean the soul.
Yeah.
And the 10 Commandments was the commandments that was used to teach me how to be human towards my brother.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. I knew it exists, but I just knew that it didn't exist in the environment that
Mm.
I came up in. So when I
Hail the
start
ancestors. Hail the ancestors.
Hail the ancestors. So I started applying those principles, and man, you know what I found out it did? It helped me to confront my ego. It helped me to tame my ego. And then in the 20, I think it's the fifth chapter of Galatians, it started talking about the works of the flesh and the fruits of
Yeah.
the spirit. Then I said to myself, I start putting things together that this thing is more deeper than what
Yep.
people are really speaking on. So it's interesting. I see that you found your path in history.
Oh yeah.
You're
Oh yeah.
you're very good at it, and I have to admit.
I've always been a nerd. I've always loved reading. You remember back home, we had the you remember the little bookcase mama used to put her knickknacks on it, and then on
Mhm.
the bottom it had books.
Yeah.
Daddy had bought some Bible books.
Mhm. Yeah,
Then
yeah,
there
we
was
had that whole line of,
yeah. Then there
yeah, right, right,
then there
right.
was a set of history books. Man, I ran through all of those so many times I can't remember. And from then on, I just loved reading and I loved history. And I always included the Bible as I got older. I started, when you also think of the Bible growing up
Mhm,
as part of that was history,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And then as I started getting older, started putting history and the Bible kind of
mhm,
together, looking at them
mhm,
in that sense.
mhm,
And then again, as I went through high school, it really intensified again when I found my path, when I too, came into Christianity, right? Really stepped into it, and again, you talk about construction and deconstruction. You were questioning earlier about, how do you form constructs and things like that. A lot of things is culture, right? So in culture, part of culture is a natural system of control without without, and I don't use control in a negative way,
mhm, mhm,
because culture binds you into expectations,
mhm.
right? So for instance, if you're born in a Christian house, then the expectation was you're going to be a Christian.
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, that was part of our Black culture coming up from down south. That's something that's just been given to us.
Mhm. Pass down.
So even when you made your move into something deeper in Christianity, it was a change of construct.
Mhm,
It
mhm,
was a type of deconstruction.
mhm,
Now, when that happens, everybody looks at you like you nuts because
mhm.
you are going outside of the cultural norm of what's expected of what's been established.
That's
But
right.
stepped out to your path. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and found myself.
Bro, and found yourself. So like I started the same thing.
Mhm,
And when I did that, again, I because I'm a nerd, I started reading everything. And when I'm reading things, you read things that by faith and by belief, it doesn't make sense. But we'll take it by faith. Okay,
mhm,
it doesn't
mhm,
make sense. God can do anything.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
And then I remember, you might not remember it, but it was in 1994. And when you were going through your African thing, I came down to Indianapolis to visit you, and I was sick, and y'all took care of me. I had the flu.
yeah, we was living on Roslyn at the
You were living
time
on Roslyn
in that greenhouse.
in that greenhouse. And during those 2 years in Japan, I had pretty much had enough of what I was going through at that place with Christianity. And I said to you, I'm like, and now you're talking to me about this African consciousness and this African stuff, right? And I'm like, all right, man. Last time I followed you, it took me on a path, right, of growth. And I said, but you know what, bro, I'm getting out of it. And you said to me, nah, bruh, don't get out of it yet. There are some things that you need to learn. There's some things you need to learn. So let me tell you what happened. I went back to Japan.
Mhm.
My white pastor had my kufi hat on, my brown leather kufi hat, bruh. So I'm already got the foot on the door. And I
Hey,
went to a Sunday
let me interrupt real quick. You remember that, portrait we took that
yeah,
we all had
I
our
agreed
African.
on. Bro, we were clean, bro. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
go
so
ahead, go ahead, I'm listening.
I went to Sunday school, and after Sunday school, bro, I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I got in my car between Sunday school and the service and hit the parking lot, was on my way out, was at my main turn. Man, my my pastor, white guy, ran out there. He goes, Brother Rocker, God spoke to me and said, I need to talk to you. So man, we went back and talked, and I had let some things out. And he
Mhm,
goes, okay. And that's when things kind of changed. And it just so happened what you said, I'll tell you why it was so important. This man was a great teacher,
mhm.
bro. This man knew his Bible. He knew his doctrine.
So he knew the word.
Bro. He knew it, bro. I mean, he'd get on the board, bro. He knew. You know when somebody know their stuff.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
you
had
know.
the opportunity for 7.5 years to sit under a great Bible teacher, right? And one of the things that I do respect is that he actually loved God. He
Mhm,
loved God and he loved people
mhm,
and worked
mhm,
tirelessly.
mhm,
We all have our human flaws, but like I say, I call it like I see it. Okay, I call it like I see it. And the funny thing was, when everything was over with, we were at my military retirement, and he asked for a minute, and he said, you know what? He said, I put this to Brother Rocker through the fire. I didn't make it easy for him. He said, but you know what? Out of all the people I've met in my life, he is what the scripture calls a man of a perfect spirit.
mhm, mhm.
You know,
Pure spirit.
perfect spirit. Yep.
Yeah.
He said, you know what? He's the real deal. You know. So like I said, man, all of that was, part of my journey. And yeah, So, but
Well,
my
there were a distance between our age and our lifestyle, because of the age difference. I had left home much. I never saw you in academically. I never saw you. We never had those conversations. I knew very little about you and the things that you were going through. Well, based upon some things that I see on the outside, but that didn't tell me anything about what your drives and what your ambitions was. And I
see,
didn't see those ambitions. I didn't see any of that because during my transition from home, I was still in a space where I was trying to get my foot grounded,
trying to find me, trying to
trying to
find
find me
the
because I
lane.
knew, yeah, nobody was going to help me find me.
Nope.
And when I go to wisdom go to knocking on people's doors and people start closing doors, then you realize real quick that you're homeless.
You by yourself.
You're by yourself. So you
Can I
either
tell you something? Can I
go
tell you
ahead.
something? But I
Go
hope
ahead.
you're recording this.
Oh, it's being recorded, yes.
Okay. Let me tell you something. And again, it goes back to one of the questions that you asked. So again, talking about constructs, you have to be able to look at everything really big. So take our parents,
Mhm,
for instance, right?
mhm,
Where
mhm,
our parents grew up in Jim Crow, came up during the Great Migration, right? And one of the things that's a hallmark of that generation is discipline,
mhm,
how
mhm,
they discipline their children. And, it's easy for us to sit back and look at it. I look at it all the time and go, my mom used to beat me. Just, I used to think she used to beat me just to stay in practice. And I was the baby
mhm,
boy, right? But understand where they were coming from. They were coming from an environment to where if you stepped out of line and didn't obey
mhm.
what the system had, you could die. And part of why they disciplined us that way was because of their innate fears that they brought with them
And they passed on to their
and they
children.
passed on
The
to us.
sins of the father passes on to the children.
Check this out. Our Father, check this out. Our Father, as a man, I think a man's greatest fear is that his children get in trouble with the law,
Mhm.
right? So they bring that same type of forceful discipline. They didn't sit down and have conversations with you. Our dad tried to, because most times when he was cool, at least for me, by the time it got down to me, he tried to explain a little bit to you why you getting ready to get this whooping or whatever. But for
Well,
you
one
guys, it wasn't like that.
well, with, me and Larry, it was different. Dad had sat down a lot of times when he was in his center, that he
Uh-huh.
would sit down and he was a very spiritual man, prophetic
Yeah,
person
yeah,
in his persona. He when he was in his zone and he didn't have a lot of stuff going on,
yeah.
he could become very, very prophetic.
Great
And
analogy.
the way he see the future, he could
Great
really kind
analogy.
of read the future. So there were a lot of times he would sit down with Larry and I and sit us across the table and talk knowledge and talk wisdom. And that's the part that drew you to him because his information and what he was feeding you is something that we needed. Now I took it all to heart. And, I didn't take it for granted. So I wasn't like a rebellious, I didn't have a rebellious spirit in me.
You didn't.
I had a comply spirit. I mean, you could tell me something to do, and I would, you don't have to beat it in me to get it done. I would figure out a way to get it done. I would challenge it sometimes, but that's just youth. That's just youth.
But
But yeah, he would sit down a lot of times and he would share some knowledge, and it'd be true. I've seen him sit down and share some knowledge with Uncle Eugene, and so, but that just became him. That was the part that was him in spirit.
yeah,
That was his real spirit. The
yeah,
other side was Jim Crow.
yeah, yeah. Good point.
See,
Good
so
point. And you know what? Going back to what you said about how we didn't see one another a certain way, that's because we were raised in a way that you're going to have to figure it out. There's some things that you're going to have to figure out, right?
yeah, let me say this real quick, and I'll remember. You saying that is so true, and we were not raised up with fences.
Right?
So I wanted to put that in the air. I wanted to put that into the recording because that makes a big difference. We were not raised in a fence in a yard where we couldn't go nowhere.
Yeah.
We were not put in that kind of box. Go ahead.
No,
You go ahead. Go
no.
ahead.
But even, I mean, that's physical, right? And I'm saying I hope, no, I take it you're saying that from a physical and almost a
Oh,
spiritual.
definitely physical because I was probably the first one to thought outside of the box.
Oh yeah, and in talking about our differences in our ages and things like that, and how what you didn't see in me, I'm my family griot. I watched everything. I watched everybody. I listened, man.
Hmm.
I listened, and like I always knew you were a drummer to your own beat. You were You were us, but you had your own beat. Larry had his own beat. Timmy had his own beat. And Debbie was just Debbie. Spud was all heart. He had his beat. And I was just the little mannish brother. But I watched everything and I paid attention to everything. So it's funny, back to what you said about, academics and the things that I was interested in.
Hmm.
Eric, a few years ago, Eric was hanging out with some of his fellas, golfing and things like that. And Eric hang around guys I grew up with. Eric told them, said, "Yeah, man, shoot, man is writing a book, man doing this, man." And he goes, "Man, I didn't know man was smart like that." Eric goes, "Dude," he goes, "My baby brother was straight. My baby brother was basically straight A's on up until a girl passed him a note in the seventh grade, right?"
Hmm.
So like I said, those are things that, and my friends knew. So for instance, in certain classes, my friends would sit around me in certain classes because
Hmm.
they know I did in English, I did the reading and history. I did the
Hmm.
reading and social studies. I did the reading and the assignment.
Hmm.
Whereas when it came to math, I sat around them.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
You know,
yeah,
it's
man.
it's interesting because my journey as far as academic, I was that kid in the room that saw the universe outside of out. There's a book called Seven Smarts,
Hmm.
and I'll try to post that. It's a book. It's called Seven Smarts, and what it's saying is that there's seven different types of smarts. Some some smarts is in mathematics, science. Some is in art. Some is in body, when people like athletes.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of different ways that intelligence and that is expressed. And so I understood why arts was very important because I learned through the arts. Now, people didn't understand what baseball did for me. Baseball was not only the ability to perfect the craft of throwing strikes, curveball, knuckleballs, and drop balls, but it did something spiritually to me. It gave me I had a relationship with body control, mental control, and I could take a ball when I was 8 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old. I could take a ball, a baseball in my hand. And if I can see what I want to do with it, my hands will make it happen. I had a knuckleball that I would throw. It would break so far outside the batter stance that the batter would literally think the ball was getting ready to hit him. And he will drop out of the pocket and the ball would break right across the plate. I was amazing myself. I was like, what is this? This became some kind of magical, like, what is this? But I learned a lot because I learned a lot about connecting myself, my spirit, my mind, and body. And so I'm saying that to say that I couldn't find that in academics at that time. I didn't become academically inclined until after I got older.
Hmm. It's funny. I just wanted to, you keep your thought. I just want to throw something up about baseball for anybody that sees this. Terry Crosby, who was lived across the street from us, one of the athletes in the history of Toledo, Ohio, wrote in
DeVilbiss
his
High School.
book,
Yeah. He wrote a
he
book.
said, "Across the street from me lived the Rocker family. It was six of them. Larry was a great baseball player, and Timmy said, but then he had a whole paragraph on you. He basically said, he's the one who made me stop playing baseball and move to something else because that boy could pitch."
Hey, and this was spiritual. When I was a young child, Alex, I was attached to my spirit. I was never spiritually detached.
Right, right.
Everything I did was
I feel you.
spiritual. Like you see how you are academic. I mean, like I just say, when I come to you and what you do, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. This is not me. It's his path because I understand his path because I understand my own. So I just thought it was I was very spiritual. I couldn't set academically to do. I had to see things spiritually in order to
I mean,
comprehend purpose. If I didn't see it, maybe it's the Gemini in me. If I couldn't see it or perceive it, then I couldn't experience it. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Bro, let me tell you something. I think that you said the word experience, right? And for me, that when I talk about experience, that means a lot because a lot of times, again, our construct, and we're all different individuals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How a person sees and experiences the divine has an impact on how they live their life, how they see themselves,
That's right.
is how they see the divine, which goes back to what I was saying that the ancients, our people, didn't look at God from the outside. They looked at God as being part of everything and a part of you.
That's right.
So, what makes deconstruction a step, what makes it difficult is if people are taught to fear God from the outside, it will always be there.
Which is a European concept.
It's a European, Eurocentric concept.
Yep.
If you are afraid of, why do I have to be? You know what? Do you remember one of the, you remember, you remember what God told Adam and Eve in the garden? The Bible said that he approached them.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, Adam, Adam, where are you? And he goes, well, I'm here. He said, what are you doing? I'm hiding because I was naked. The question I love is, who told you that?
You,
Now you apply that principle to everything. Who
that's right.
told you that? So who told you to be afraid of God? Who told you that you're just a low down, dirty sinner? That
Mm-hmm.
there's no good in you. And if it wasn't for, the sacrifice of Christ or whatever, that you would be no good. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, but God did not create me like that.
Mm-mm.
He may have created y'all like that,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't create me like that, which goes back to what you were saying, the 42 laws of Maya, which
Mm-hmm.
we'll call laws. They say, I have not
Mm.
killed.
That's
I have
right.
not deceived.
That's
I have
right.
not. I have not. Not you shall not.
No,
Because
I have not.
I have not. Because it's already in you. And for all those 42, man, I can't go through all 42 and go, well, dog, well, I can't say I did that. But now I have something to strive for
Yeah, yeah,
today.
yeah. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. When you first start going through that, what happens is it attacks the ego, is what it
Yeah.
does. Because that's my biggest thing. My biggest challenge wasn't a challenge, but my learning curve was developing that personality. Who is this personality? Who is this alternate personality that comes out of myself or comes out of other people that always seem to put me in a position that I don't want, did never intended to be in, but wound up being in and taking the blame and the spiritual consequences that go with it. That became the ego. I figured that out real soon. And I said, well, who is this ego? What is this ego? So I started that spiritual inward journey. The ego is a fabricated personality. It's not
Yeah.
real. It is what was implanted in us when we first came out of the womb.
Uh-huh.
Don't do this. You can't do this. You can't do that. That's good. This is not good. This is education. You're going to get this. Your teachers, your principals, your mother, your father, your norm, all these things created the first
Construct and
personality
systems of
in you.
control. Yep.
The self control. It was the first
Yep.
child that was created, rebellious child that was created inside of your being before
Wow.
you ever came to fruition.
Wow.
And your true fruition didn't come until after you reached a certain age limit when the real you wanted to emerge. And then when it did, it found itself in chaos or in war with the other self. So there's only one true devil that you can put a finger on, and that's the one that was put in you from birth.
Mhm.
We call that the double. That's the double was actually what that is. So
Mhm.
in order to manage, first of all, people talk about killing the ego. You can't do that. If you
Mhm.
killed your ego or tried to attack your ego, it would drive you insane because the ego have access to your subconscious mind that you never know how deep it can reach to pull out weapons of destruction to
Yeah.
destroy your spirit or your personality or break your spirit. So you don't destroy the ego. What you do is you negotiate with the ego. You treat it as though it's another individual or another person. You negotiate, you talk, you have conversations with it, and then you get back with it when things are, but the ego is there to protect you against the elements that it was designed and created for, to protect you in this world. See, when you go pump gas in a night city where when you go pump gas in the night, at night, you go to a gas station, and I tell this to my clients. I say the ego was designed for you to go there, pump gas in that situation, and you're supposed to put on a swag. You're supposed to send out certain energy like, this is my space. I don't want to be bothered. If you do, there's going to be some trouble. And if somebody approach you, you're going to throw on that energy on them. That's what the ego was before. It's a protector. But the ego never knew that it was designed to be a protector. Your spirit is supposed to be the one that's driving the vehicle until you develop that relationship with your ego, that your ego is designed to protect when you need it. And when it's not needed, you can take a back seat and trust me, I'm in control. That's when you start developing a relationship with your higher self and your spiritual self. Because as long as the ego felt that it's designed to protect you and you're realizing that it's putting you in situations you don't want to be in, think about it, Alex. How many relationships do you think people fell in love with and they found out that they weren't in love at all? Then who was creating those romantic feelings? Who's driving that force? It don't always have to be lust.
Mhm.
The ego is looking to, let me say, I had an old saying, I said, God create man, man create the devil, and the devil creates the demon.
Mhm.
That we live in a world of creation.
Yeah.
So as long it is always going to create something is going to always create. It's law. That's just the way
Mhm.
that it's going to be. That's just the way it is. So the ego is, when you can understand the ego and you can deal with your ego, you may be in the Garden of Gethsemane, but you have to confront your ego in order for you to cross the threshold and start elevating yourself into your spiritual path. Because if you don't, the ego will always be there to.
So, doctor, let me ask you something about
Sure, go ahead.
the ego. My understanding of the ego. And again, I haven't read my psychology books in a long time, or some of my spiritual books on the ego. But the ego is a natural part of our existence. The ego is part of our earthly bodily experience, that
Period.
a lot of what we learn and everything is filtered through our minds, filtered through our part of
Census.
ourselves, and filtered through our ego.
Yes.
And the thing about the ego, if I'm not mistaken, is that when we die, the ego cease to exist.
It detach.
And it is the ego that wants to live, that
That's it.
doesn't want to die.
That is absolutely true.
Because this is all the ego knows,
This realm was created for the
or the
ego. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. There's a higher side of the ego and
come
there's a
on.
lower side of the ego. You're spiritually, the academic work that you've done as far as history is concerned, that's ego,
Mhm,
higher ego.
mhm,
Because it's an achievement that you created that balance and gave you spiritual plateaus and it connect you to your higher spiritual self. It's a journey and a process. That's the
right.
higher ego. The destructive ego is the hustle, is the hustle, the murder, the killing. Let me get this, let me get that. That's lower ego. This is interesting. Everything energy is created, but it's never destroyed. Okay. So now we're talking laws. We're talking about law. So the egos, so what happens to that lower energy? that a person that a person gives a piece of their soul into creating that vibration or that frequency. What happens to that energy at the time of death? At the time that the ego separates from the physical body, where does that energy go?
Mhm,
Now, your higher ego, your knowledge that you've accumulated with your higher ego, it goes on with you into evolutions and incarnation. But
mhm.
the lower ego, that stays here on this plane and it builds momentum. See, this realm that we're in right now, this world that we're in right now, that we're experiencing in 2026, we're experiencing these principalities. That energy goes into principalities and it strengthens principalities. That's the reason why the rituals and things like people are doing right now. Certain people are doing right now. I'm not going to get into all of the other stuff.
I get what you're saying. It's in the news.
It's in the news. That energy is to fuel principalities for power and control the realm, to control this lower
Say that. Keep
realm.
going.
Go ahead. Okay.
No, we're
So
good.
that's where this energy goes into what we call the underworld or the shadow world. People confuses darkness with shadow. There's a difference in the two. There's a difference between the darkness, the shadow, and the light. There's three, and people confuses the two. And the ego and the devil loves to play the game of confusion. The darkness is pure. That's where light came from. It gave birth. It's like the womb of your universe. It's pure. It's
The perfect
the perfect black. And then light is the perfect manifestation, the first mother and the first son. But the shadow world is where all the corrupt, evil stuff hangs at. Other words, if you done evil and you, what happens to people? People say, okay, well, I did do this and I shouldn't have done it. And I treated this person wrong or I did this evil to this person. I'm doing time for, well, what happened to that energy that a person used, that a person engaged in that activity? If they went to prison and served their physical time. But what about that energy time? It's still attached to the heart, right? So until a person release that energy off their heart and they get forgiven, they forgive themselves. But the energy and the act that it did, it shifts to the shadow. Is that confusing?
No, 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 no. So when you say it shifts into the shadow world, is it shifting into the ether of the shadow
The
world?
principalities of that
That it's
governs
just
that plane.
out there. It has nothing to do with the individual in whom you wronged,
No,
right?
because remember, when you come through here to come into this world, you are shaped in iniquity. This stuff is already, this is the first part. You really come in ignorant in this world. You were
Thankfully.
actually really think about it. You were born in hell and you're trying to find a way to get out of it.
Mhm.
Your first experience is not to raise your spirituality and become one with God. Your first reaction and your first reality is to survive.
It's survival.
Survive. And you'll survive. And so when you start hustling, killing, murdering, those things are all against the purpose of humanity and creation. But you don't know no better because that's all you knew. And you don't live in this world long enough to know better because actually I didn't really grow up to understand the world till I was 50.
Of course. And it's short.
And now I'm 70.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now my mind is growing as wiser, but my body is shutting down slower.
Yeah.
See, so there's a time level to that. But, I just wanted to see there's a difference between the two. And when people see Europeans and them, and I'm gonna say Europeans and all those people, all those different cultures that has this capacity to hate humanity and hate life, these people are pulling from that shadow.
Wow.
That's where that energy, all this energy is coming from. It's coming from that world and it's getting stronger. That was the reason why that's the reason why the earth is going through this transition right now. See, because the shadow world and this world we're living in right now is beginning to merge. When the Bible's talking about there's going to come a period of time when people going to want death and death is going to flee, it's going to fall into that shift. It's interesting because you can lay, you know what? Have you ever went to bed and woke up and you thought the day might have been Sunday, but it was Monday or maybe Wednesday, or it feels like a Tuesday?
I
And
can't keep up with days anymore.
I can't either.
I can't keep up with days. It's funny you say that.
Yeah, man.
I drive a school bus sometime and kids get on the bus. I go, hey, happy Tuesday. They go, Mr. Rocker, it's Wednesday. Like, well, thank you, man. Thanks for letting me know. Couple more
See,
days.
see, spiritually, we don't know what goes on around us when we go to sleep and wake up. We went to sleep and woke up 20 years ago. I never would have thought that we'd be living in the period of AI, artificial intelligence. I never would have thought that 20 years ago. People talked about it. We didn't even have the technology. Where's this technology coming from? I was reading an article and it was talking about that the lady who was a lady who's in charge of CERN, something like that. And I wish I could pull the facts up, but I'll try to do that when I edit everything. That she apologized that and she apologized that they had collapsed 5 planes.
Yeah. Yeah, you sent me
Did
that.
you hear about that?
Yeah,
She
I did
collapsed that they accidentally collapsed 5 planes,
5 planes or 5 portals or something.
5 portals. Think about that. So, see, there I am. That's the reason why I'm outside of the box. So you were already dealing in portals, but you didn't want us to think in frequencies.
Mhm.
You wanted to keep us academically framed in this shadow education that you're giving humanity while you try to steal from heaven. You have no business. Why would you didn't accidentally collapse the portals? What you accidentally, you know what I think? And I'm just paraphrasing.
Roll the dice.
You remember in the story of Moses when Moses was giving Pharaoh all of these commandments to let my people go, and out of Pharaoh's arrogance, uh, he just kept putting bigger, harder burdens on God's people. So Moses left the last curse for who? For Pharaoh. And
Yeah.
so I think that this right here, I think this technology, I think that this technology is their kryptonite.
Mhm.
They have no control over it. They don't understand it. And I think that this is just me. I just think that that energy, that technology is designed for melanin. That's melanin technology, is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that the people who understand and harnesses that energy will be. They can go to 5G, 6G, 7G, 8G, and I think that if you got melanin, you just automatically adapt to the frequency. But what it's
Mm.
going to actually do to them is going to have to drive them underground in order to survive. Because I don't think they'll be able to do it. And if they're collapsing frequencies and collapsing planes, I think that they're moving them. I think that they're playing with tech. They're like babies with a pistol, with a gun in the crib.
Mhm.
That's what, that's what they are. And I don't know how I got off on this, but I just thought that that was,
That's fine. No, no, that's
yeah,
cool. No, no,
yeah.
no, man.
I just think that, but with the ego and stuff like that, that's ego. That's pure, no regards for, that's ego attached to the shadow world. And the shadow world is fueling that Galatian, I think is the 5th chapter, Galatian, the lust of the flesh. It's the shadow world that feeds that energy
So
that
tell me
is
something.
consumed through the ego.
So tell me something. Does that mean when we go back years, from what I'm gathering from you, that let's say we have the light world,
Hmm.
the dark world, and the shadow world?
Hmm.
Are we saying that back in ancient times, our shadow worlds were a lot smaller?
Sure it was.
And then as time has get on and we might had migrations, we've had everything that what we now call civilization that has grown. We go through the different periods of learning, and the more man interacts with each other, wars and conquering and civilizations and all of that, different economic systems. Mainly to me, it's always capitalism. That to me, capitalism is a major part of Western civilization, and capitalism
Hmm.
spread a lot of this shadow world.
Mhm,
Western civilization has
mhm,
increased the
mhm,
shadow world, whereas the simplicity of what's dark is always dark. There are always people in that realm.
mhm,
And the light realm, there's
mhm,
always people in the light. But I
mhm.
think, if I understood you correctly, you're saying that that shadow world is growing
It's
bigger.
growing. It's growing. And you know why it's growing? Have you ever heard? Let me see. I'm trying to think. You know, when we set off to have this podcast, I didn't have all this information available, but I would have. But you know
No,
what? We'll figure it out. But hey, you ever heard of the?
we'll pick it up another time. What we
We'll
don't
pick.
get
Yeah, thank you, thank you. We'll pierce it. We'll paste it together. But hey, look. You ever heard of? You know what a great year is?
a great year.
The Earth. The
Is that the 24,000 or the
20,
25,000 year
25. Yeah,
as it
that
cycles as
that
it cycles
cycles through
through the
the
12 houses
zodiac,
of the
through the
zodiac?
12 because of the zodiac. Now, each one of those cycles produce a golden year, a
Yep,
silver era, and a bronze era.
yep.
Okay. So that is Ceres. Now, from what I understand, Ceres is what pulls our sun through those constellations. Yeah, through the constellation that gives us that cycle. What they're
Right.
saying is that when the sun is, Ceres is farthest from our sun, that's when we're in the Bronze Age.
And let me ask this. Ceres is part of what's on Orion's belt. I think that bunch
Yes,
of stars.
yes, that's the full, yes, yes, that's star system, which gave birth to our sun.
Of course.
Okay. So when they're completely detrimented to one another, they're saying that's when our solar system is in its bronze stage. So we have Hellenistic activities, we have wars and fights, and it's the dark part of the planet of the solar system. But as Ceres start coming around and getting closer to the sun, we move into a new era. We start moving into a silver era where knowledge and things in that start coming about. But when you hear people talk about this is the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aquarius, we're in Aquarius now. That's the reason why things is happening
Yeah,
on the planet right now. All
yeah.
those things that was in darkness is being revealed. You can't hide stuff anymore because you can't help it because there's a greater law that's running this thing other than what we're experiencing here as beings, human beings on this planet here. So we're moving into an era that's forcing that to take
Now keep
place.
that thought. Keep that thought. I heard a man say that there are certain things that's happening right now because we've moved into Aquarius, and that during the time of Pisces, that Pisces had certain characteristics.
Hmm.
And like I said, I haven't read it, but he said part of it was de- deception. Part of it was selfishness. Part of it was very controlling.
Hmm.
He said, and he goes on to say all of this was, if you look at that 2,000 years from when we went from the ram and the lamb
Hmm. Hmm.
into the water bearer, which of course
Hmm.
is symbolic of Jesus, said you look at everything that's happened to the world, right, under the sign of the water bearer. And he was saying that when as we get ready to move, there are people that are still stuck
That's right.
in Piscean thinking and the
That's right.
spirit of Pisces. And it's going to take a few years for people to break out of that. Now, when I heard that, I thought about when we were going from the ram, right,
Hmm.
to the lamb and the goat, or oh,
Hmm.
excuse me, we're going
Taurus.
from the goat and the lamb going into Pisces. If you remember, it took about 200, 300 years for Christianity to fully take hold. They had to kill out all the esoteric knowledge.
They
They had
sure
to
did.
kill out Gnosticism. They
Yes,
had to
they
kill
did.
out the Egyptian mysteries. They had to burn libraries. They had to do all that for 400, 500 years until I think it was, I forget which ecumenical council it was, Chalcedon. Chalcedon in 431 was when they actually codified what Christianity would be. It took them that long to prepare for that. And while they were burning all those books and everything, from there is when we started going into the dark
Yeah,
ages.
thank
So
you.
yeah, there's going to be to, people that are still caught in that
Hmm.
because my understanding, and you can probably know a little bit more about this than me, is that the Aquarian age is a lot more about information,
Hmm.
technology,
Hmm.
detachment,
Hmm.
individual spirituality,
That's
and a
right.
coming together
That's right.
for everyone. And
And you
and
have principalities that is fighting against it. And that's why the whole planet is at war. The whole
groaning,
planet is just struggling. The whole
right?
planet is wrestling with femininity and masculinity. The whole world is just striving and just pulling and shifting and just the whole world is up because that is the frequency on the planet. So when the lady said that she collapsed, that they think they machinery that they created collapsed these planes. They didn't collapse anything. They just woke up to something that, they just woke up to something that they have no control over. Would you want to collapse it? No, you would probably want to prevent it
Control.
so that you can maintain control.
And it's amazing that you would bring this up because when you talk about that 24 years, the 24-year cycle, this is what the type of information and wisdom and learning that the ancestors figured out in Africa.
Thank you.
They had all this stuff figured out. They had it all mapped, right? And they passed this information on up because a lot of times when people think of Africa, they just think of Africa like this. But they don't know that Africa covered all of Palestine, all the area of Levant. Africa covered almost all the way at different times going on into India,
Hmm.
right? And not just, we always talk about Egypt, but no one ever talks about the Sudan and Nubia and
Hmm.
all of that at the Upper Nile that also birthed all of that. So all this esoteric wisdom and knowledge, right? And we'll talk about this later,
Hmm.
how they took control of the books, took control of the wisdom. And the Bible says something. He says, talking about the Jews, he goes, "You who are not a people are now my people." The Bible also says in the New Testament that there are those who call themselves,
Jews.
mhm, but they're really in the synagogue.
That's right. That's right.
So,
And so that's what we go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
so all I'm saying is that all of this destruction of wisdom, which is part of what my book is about, if everybody knows that life came from Lower East Africa, the
Hmm.
first woman who you can trace everybody's genetic marker to
Hmm.
came from a
Hmm.
black woman in Southern Africa, East Africa. And everybody recognizes that migration, right? From
Right.
Africa, whatever. Whether or not the worlds were together during the time and they broke apart in the continents,
See,
whatever happened, in the times of Peleg, the world was divided. But whatever.
that's the reason why, when we know, first of all word is God's word. Word belongs in the sound family, period. So if a word become corrupted, it's still God's word. All this knowledge, all this information is God. And my train of thought is when we understand that you are a history buff and you know the power that colonizers do when they go to colonize a particular country or a particular people. Spiritually, metaphysically, when you start talking about, I remember the movie. You ever saw the movie Shaka Zulu?
Yeah, it's been a few years.
It's been a few years. You get a chance, you go see it. But remember, the code word is chakra
Yeah.
Zulus, the chakras of the Zulus. That's
Wow.
the code word. Because remember, if you study the movie, they say that chakra was a myth. They believed that it was a myth or something that people didn't know. He didn't physically exist, but it was a prophecy that he was going to show up or he was going to come. So the Shaka Zulu story is the Zulu chakra system is what
Mm.
the colonizers was after. And they used Christianity and the mirror to do it, to bring them
Wow.
down. If you go back, check the movie is really so. How we been doing?
We're doing great, man.
You
We're
do.
doing great. Like I say, you do your little editing or whatever. But this is the great thing, and this is the great thing. We've sat down and we kind of figured out how it's going to go and things like that. And I think that probably we just need to pick up a few things, man.
Hmm.
We need to pick up a few things and just roll with them
Hmm.
because I think that both of us has a. I think both of us, each one of us has. We have a lane,
Hmm.
right? But then there's that third lane in the middle where we're like this.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so, like I said, man, you hit your lane, you hit your lane.
That third, you know what that third lane in the middle is?
What that?
It's called a veil. That's it. So, and maybe that's what people are feeling is that zane because you teach on things and you speak on things that is very very profound. And there are things that I know that I may have experienced that is very spiritual, but not but. And I just think that that's probably what make what we do probably work because we're in
Yeah,
our lane, we specialize in what we do, and
yeah,
people come in, and if people decided they want to ask questions or be a participant of something, they can find themselves either in your lane or they'll find themselves in mine.
or here.
Mhm. Or and they're gonna that's them going which way, to the left or to the right. And
Yeah,
I think and that's what you have to just like in sales, you have to give people options.
yeah,
We can present a package, but it's up to the people to decide. Whoever you give an option to is the one that will trust your services.
yeah.
That's what I learned in sales.
And again, like I say, I'm Afrocentric, and like I said, African consciousness, which basically challenges anything that goes against what's true
Mhm.
and what's factual. And I think it's very important that for me, it's just like if you notice, you said, bro, your work is very scholarly. It has to be because when you're doing scholarly work, you have to have backup, right? Because there
Absolutely.
are, there are people that have done more research on what you're commenting on
Absolutely.
than what you just happen to run across, which is the
Absolutely.
same thing, like I say, when I started talking about the transatlantic slave trade, the involvement of certain people. I have to make sure, right, that all my references and what I'm saying is correct, can be
Dot I's, cross
verified.
T's.
It's almost like, hey, I'm just telling you what I saw. I'm just telling you what I reported. Jojo
Mhm.
wrote this,
Mhm.
right, in his academic work, which happens to correspond with the flow that I'm on.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I have man, I got libraries of books. I got books I won't talk about here, but I got spiritual books. I
This,
got
this is my library.
I got books on
This is my
astronomy.
library.
I got those books, but they're there because I didn't have a platform to bring, to bring that information out on. So a lot of stuff that I have, I can back it up too. So it's so I'm just saying that what this is really powerful.
Can I
Go
tell you
ahead.
something? This is, and again, I think what's important, the Bible talks about God is concerned about. I think it's in Romans. It says the word of God is quick and powerful, is sharper than any. Not Romans, but Hebrews. Hebrews 12, I think. The word of God is quick and sharp, quick and
Then
powerful,
any to
sharper
a
than any
short.
two-edged sword, dividing asunder uh, bone, joint, marrow.
Mm-hmm.
But the last part of it says, and it is a divider of the thoughts and intents of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always felt that the thoughts and intents of your heart are right. And a lot of people through ego, they want to feel that they're right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if the real thoughts and intentions of your heart is right, that means truth is going to be pinnacle to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For me, truth is important because I am an authentic person. This is my authentic self. When I step out in the world, I don't have to put on airs.
Mm-mm,
Man, what you
mm-mm.
see is what you get.
Yeah, it's easy for you to live your truth.
And that's what's important, right?
Yeah,
And I
sure
think that
is.
that portion of truth is very important. That that uh that truth matters. And I live for truth. And that's why I do what I do or the path that I'm on
Hmm.
is because I love truth. And when I was in Christianity fully,
Hmm.
man, I was looking for the truth. And
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
though, and even though I was understanding the truth as it was being told, man, there was that part of me that was like, there's more to this story. And part of that was, we can talk about it later, is how I started my journey of
Hmm.
deconstruction.
Well, you know what? And I think that, that is a pure spirit, a pure heart. And I just think that, you know, that's the foundation of truth
Man,
is being pure. And people need to understand that everybody is on a path. How many roads does it take in order to lead? How many roads are there that leads to God or leads to knowledge or leads to wisdom and understanding? I don't know. Probably as many as the rays of the sun. I don't know. So, people need to settle down, relax, and quit painting people with brushes and protecting ideologies that don't even benefit them. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with Christian ideologies.
bro, hold up. This is a whole nother podcast. All right. Bro, I got my nuclear bombs, my neutron bombs. I got F-20, I got F-35s. I got heat seekers, bruh. All right. That's a whole nother subject.
Well, hey
And
man,
again,
we go ahead.
with,
Go.
with my primary thing, right, for us, especially for people of the land, people from the motherland, right?
Mm-hmm.
That people who were bought here, who had their spirituality and everything stripped from them, but they couldn't take away that innate thing that, if, as Dr. Francis Cress says, it's melanin. They could
Mm-hmm.
never take away that connection
No, they can't.
that we have. That's what makes us. They can't live with us, don't want to live with us, but damn it, they just can't
Can't
live
live
without us.
without us. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's to be recognized. And if you look at it from that way, then deconstruction should be free for you to just go back a little bit and just re-examine what I said God said to Adam. Who told you that?
Well, Alex, let me say this, and you ponder it and you think about it. I'm just going to present it to you because this has been in my spirit for quite a while, and I think you're more in a position to be able to carve the new out a new or an old original path that our people has been a part of. And that is, I've always, when I found out that Africa the name Africa was a colonizer's name. That's no different
Africanus.
than me accepting my straw name.
Mhm.
That's for me to accept my straw name that a colonizer created and they went out and brutally divided up Africa, brutally for economic reasons, merchandise and slaved and pedophilia and all the stuff that was involved in that activity. I can't embrace the name Africa. Furthermore, I think the name Africa can be monetized.
So let me tell you something about Africa. What
Go ahead.
the ancient Romans, for the ancient Greeks, those in Europe, when they spoke of Africa, they spoke of a direction, not a country.
Okay.
They
Okay.
spoke of a direction. When they spoke of Ethiopians, Cushites, um, Ethiopians, Cushites, Nubians, whatever. They were talking about, now they're talking about a specific people, but they all knew that that people came from that direction. So they didn't speak of Africa as a
Okay.
country because just like Europe, Europeans right now, descendants of Europeans, most of them have no real idea
Are they?
where
Is
they
that? Are they? Is that land Asian? Is that part of
well,
Asian mind
you can call Europe Western Asia because it is part of the
continent?
continent of Asia, right? But
Hmm.
in typical Western civilization fashion, they'll have you think that Europe is a continent on its
That's
own.
true.
Because as I talked about in the book about writing the story, who writes the story, right? Winston Churchill says, I know history will be kind to me because I'm going to write it, right? So when Western civilization comes in, they have to put themselves at the center of everything because they know. I got a book now by Dr. Nell, I think it's Nell Walker. She talks about the history of whiteness.
Hmm.
And she just talks about what Europeans thought of themselves. And you should have saw, and even in my book, in my writing, I talk about what different people classify as civilization, what they have to say about it. When the Romans talked about civilization or the uncivilized or the barbarians,
Hmm.
you should hear the things that they say about some of those Western European people. You should hear what they say about some of those people who lived in Britain, how they classified them. When people talk about, yeah, they were living in with furs on, they were barefoot. Hear what the Romans themselves say. Whereas the Greeks were straight out like, if you weren't Greek, if you weren't Athenian and you spoke their language, they considered you a barbarian. So if you
Mm.
didn't speak the Greek language, you were considered a barbarian. So basically, everybody outside of Athens, if the Spartans didn't speak their language, they would consider them a barbarian. But they all spoke a similar language, right? But for the Athenians, classic Athenians, you were a barbarian if you didn't speak our language. But the Romans, when the Romans started going west and encountering those Gauls, those all the different Germanic tribes, all the different Frank tribes, and all the other different tribes,
Mhm.
now they were going into that was a whole nother barbarism that the Greeks knew nothing about because they never went that way. The Greeks
Wow, that
always
makes
went
sense.
to the east. And when they go to the east, what do they find? They find the Persians, right? Darius and all of these guys. And guess what? They've already been influenced by all the wisdom and knowledge,
And the
right?
science.
They've already built their cities. They've already harnessed the power of the Tigris and the Euphrates. They've
Mm.
already built monuments and things like that. They already got irrigation, man. They already got, half of them had indoor plumbing. That's the stuff that when they went over there, they saw that and was like, whoa, which brings me back to my word. All conquerors picture themselves as the bringers of light and a new civilization to the people they conquer. The invader and the conqueror comes to rule, not civilize.
That is absolutely true. That is wow, man. Well, hey, man, um, we're gonna have to do a part two. Let this be our regular.
Use this. This is it.
Yeah,
This is it.
yeah.
This,
This,
you know why this is it? Because this is true and authentic. And
yes,
this
it's
is
true.
this is what I was, as we were communicating with each other. I said, man, when we go, we're going to flow how we flow.
Flow.
We could have a topic here and there, you know, but man, let's just go how we
And you
flow.
know.